The Goatman. The first mistake was answering it. We had been driving for hours by then, headlights cutting through the narrow county road like a blade through fog. The trees pressed close on both sides, thick and old, their branches weaving overhead into something that felt less like a canopy and more like a tunnel. There were 4 of us in the truck. Eli was driving. Mara sat in the passenger seat with her boots propped against the dash. I was in the back beside Connor, who had insisted he knew the way to the bridge. It wasn't even a famous bridge. Not like the ones with plaques and ghost tours and history articles online. This one was just there. Old iron rails, wood planks warped with age, spanning a narrow creek somewhere deep in rural backroads that barely showed up on GPS. Connor had told us about it over drinks one night. "Mate, they call it the Goatman Bridge," he'd said, grinning like he didn't quite believe himself. "You stop your car in the middle at midnight, turn off the engine, and if you call out to it, it answers." "Answers how?" Mara had asked. Connor had shrugged. "Depends who you ask. Sometimes you hear hooves, sometimes you hear your name." Eli had laughed. I'd laughed too, at the time. Now, hours into the drive, the joke had worn thin. The deeper we went, the less cell service we had. The radio dissolved into static. Even the truck's dashboard lights seemed dimmer out here, swallowed by the black forest pressing against the road. We reached the bridge at 11:52 p.m. It appeared suddenly, metal rails catching the headlights, planks gleaming faintly as if damp. The creek below was invisible except for the faint rush of water under the structure. Eli rolled slowly onto the bridge. The sound changed immediately. The tires thudded against wood instead of asphalt. The boards creaked under the truck's weight, each sound amplified in the narrow space. We stopped dead center. The engine idled for a moment, then Eli turned it off. Silence dropped like a curtain. No wind, no insects, no distant cars. Just the faint gurgle of the creek below. I felt something tighten low in my stomach. "This is stupid," I muttered. Connor twisted in his seat, grinning in the dim glow of the dashboard lights. "You scared?" "No," I said quickly. "It's just, this feels like something people made up to mess with out-of-towners." "Then prove it," Mara said softly. She rolled down her window. The cold air that entered the truck felt wrong. Not just cool, thick, heavy. It carried the scent of wet earth and something faintly sour underneath, like old hay left too long in the rain. Connor leaned toward the open window. "You gotta call it," he said. "That's the rule." Eli sighed, rubbing his hands together as if warming them. "Fine." He leaned slightly toward the steering wheel and called out into the dark. "Goatman." The word hung there, absorbed by the trees. Nothing happened. Connor smirked. "You gotta mean it." Eli rolled his eyes, but tried again, louder. "Goatman." The sound echoed faintly through the metal rails of the bridge. Still nothing. I almost laughed in relief. Then, from somewhere beneath us, something shifted. A low, hollow knock. Not wood expanding. Not water hitting stone. A deliberate impact. We all froze. "Probably just the creek," Mara said quickly, but her voice was thinner than before. Another knock. Closer this time, from directly below the truck. The wooden planks under our tires vibrated slightly. I felt it through the soles of my shoes. Connor swallowed. "That's normal. Old bridges make noise." The third sound wasn't a knock. It was a scrape. Long. Slow. Like something dragging against the underside of the bridge. My skin prickled. "Okay," I said, voice low. "That's enough. Start the car." Eli reached for the ignition. The key turned. The engine didn't catch. He frowned and tried again. Nothing. The truck had been running perfectly fine minutes ago. The silence around us deepened, pressing in from the forest like something aware of our stillness. Connor forced a laugh. See? That's part of it. The legend says if it answers, you gotta wait. Wait for what? Mara asked. He didn't answer. Another scrape echoed beneath us, this one followed by something else, a sound that didn't belong to wood or water. A breath, low, wet, right below the center of the truck. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. Eli tried the ignition again. This time, the engine turned over weakly, then died. Come on, he whispered. The breath below us grew louder, and then a single sharp impact struck the underside of the truck bed. Connor jerked violently. Mara gasped. The metal frame rang like a struck bell. Something hit it. From underneath, I couldn't stop myself. I leaned forward and looked out the back window into the darkness behind the truck. At first, I saw nothing. Then I saw movement between the trees at the far end of the bridge. A tall shape stepping slowly into the faint wash of moonlight. It wasn't animal. It wasn't fully human either. Its body was long and narrow, joints bending at slightly wrong angles as it moved. Its head sat too high above its shoulders, elongated, with two curved shapes rising from either side. Horns. I felt my breath lock in my chest. The figure stepped onto the bridge. The wooden planks groaned under its weight. It was tall enough that its head nearly brushed the metal rails on either side. It moved slowly, deliberately, as if it had all the time in the world. And as it took another step closer, I realized something worse. It wasn't looking at the truck. It was looking at me through the rear window. The face wasn't fully visible, but I could see the shape of a long snout and a mouth that curved upward unnaturally wide. Connor whispered, barely audible, "Don't look at it." Too late. The creature stopped a few feet behind the truck, close enough that I could see the texture of its skin, dark, stretched tight over bone, patches of coarse hair clinging to its shoulders. It lifted one long arm, not a hoof, not a claw, a hand. Too many joints, too long, and it knocked once, on the tailgate, deliberate, patient. The same hollow knock we'd heard beneath us. Eli turned the key again. This time, the engine roared to life. The sudden sound felt violent in the stillness. "Go!" I shouted. Eli slammed his foot down. The truck lurched forward. The tires spun briefly against the planks before catching. As we sped off the bridge, I couldn't help myself. I looked back one last time. The figure stood at the center of the bridge now. Not chasing, not moving, just watching. And as the distance grew between us, I saw it tilt its head slightly, as if memorizing. The truck didn't slow until the bridge was completely out of sight. Eli kept driving, hands tight on the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the narrow stretch of road ahead. The headlights carved a pale tunnel through the trees, but everything beyond that glow felt closer than it had before. No one spoke. The engine's hum sounded too loud. My pulse hadn't settled. Connor was the first to break the silence. "Did you see it?" he asked quietly. "Yes," Mara said at the same time I did. Eli didn't respond. The road curved sharply, tires crunching over loose gravel before returning to cracked pavement. We should have reached the main highway by now. The GPS had shown it only 15 minutes from the bridge. But the trees weren't thinning. The road wasn't widening. It just kept going. "You're sure this is the way?" I asked. Connor nodded too quickly. "Yeah, straight shot back." The forest pressed in tighter. The smell from the bridge lingered inside the truck, a faint, sour scent that hadn't been there before. Wet hay, damp fur, something animal and old. I rolled down my window slightly, hoping fresh air would clear it. The air outside felt colder than it had at the bridge. Heavier. The trees seemed taller now, their trunks dark and uniform like pillars in some enormous cathedral. The moonlight barely reached the ground. A faint sound drifted in through the crack in the window. Hoofsteps. Slow. Measured. Not on the road. In the trees beside us. Connor stiffened. "You hear that?" he whispered. Eli's jaw tightened. "It's just deer." But deer don't walk in step with a moving truck. The sound kept pace. Step, 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 always slightly out of view. I twisted in my seat to look through the rear window. The road behind us was empty. No headlights, no shapes, just darkness swallowing our taillights. Then, between two trees, I saw it again. Not fully. Just a vertical shape moving in parallel with us, slipping between trunks without breaking stride. It wasn't running. It didn't need to. It was matching us effortlessly. My throat went dry. "It's keeping up," I said quietly. Connor leaned across me to look. "Don't stare," he muttered. But it was impossible not to. The shape disappeared behind a thicker cluster of trees. The hoofsteps stopped. Silence rushed back in. We all exhaled at once. "That's it," Mara said, almost convincing herself. "We left the bridge. That's the rule, right? It stays there." Connor didn't answer. He was staring ahead. The road in front of us had changed. It wasn't cracked pavement anymore. It was wood. My stomach dropped. The truck rolled onto planks with a hollow thud, creaking, echoing. The headlights illuminated metal rails on either side. The bridge. Eli slammed the brakes. The truck skidded slightly, but stopped. We were in the center again. The exact same center. The creek below whispered faintly in the darkness. "That's not possible," Mara breathed. "No," I agreed, though the word felt useless. Eli's hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel. "I didn't turn around." Connor's voice was thin now. "You didn't?" The engine was still running this time. No one had turned it off. No one had called out. The forest on either side of the bridge was utterly still. The air felt thicker than before. I didn't want to look behind us, but I did. The figure stood at the far end of the bridge again, closer than it had been the first time. It hadn't needed to chase. We had come back. Its horns curved upward in sharp arcs, catching the faintest trace of moonlight. Its shoulders rolled slightly as it shifted its weight forward. The smile was clearer now, too wide, too deliberate. It took a step. The planks groaned. Eli pressed the gas pedal instinctively. The truck engine revved, but we didn't move. The tires spun uselessly against the wood, as if the bridge itself were holding us in place. The figure took another step. Closer. I could see more detail now. The legs bent wrong at the knee, too far backward before snapping forward again. The arms hung long and heavy, fingers nearly brushing the planks as it walked. The eyes. They weren't glowing. They were reflective, like an animal's eyes caught in headlights, except they weren't reflecting our lights. They were reflecting something behind us. Connor twisted around in his seat. "What's behind us?" he whispered. I didn't want to look. I turned anyway. At the other end of the bridge, where we had just come from, another shape stood in the darkness. Identical. Same height, same horns, same unnatural stillness. Two of them. Or one. Mirrored. My breath stuttered. The one in front of us stopped halfway down the bridge. The one behind us didn't move at all. They stood in perfect alignment, as watching. Eli's foot trembled on the gas pedal. "Get out," Connor said suddenly. "What?" Mara snapped. "Get out of the truck." "That's insane." Connor shook his head slowly, eyes wide. "It's not about the truck." The figure in front tilted its head. The one behind did the same. Perfect synchronization. "They're not blocking us," Connor whispered. "They're waiting for us to choose." "Choose what?" I demanded. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached for the door handle. I grabbed his arm. "Don't." He looked at me with a strange clarity in his eyes. "It called back," he said quietly. I felt my stomach twist. "What do you mean?" "When Eli called it on the bridge," Connor continued, voice distant, "it answered. You heard it." "Yes," I said. "So what?" "So that means it knows who called." The figure in front took one more step, close enough now that I could see the texture of its mouth stretching wider. Connor pulled his arm free. "It doesn't want all of us." The realization hit like ice water. It wasn't blocking the road. It wasn't trapping us. It was narrowing, choosing. And as I looked between the two figures, front and back, I noticed something that made my chest tighten painfully. They weren't looking at Eli. They weren't looking at Mara. They weren't looking at Connor. They were looking at me, both of them, at the same time. Connor's hand rested on the door handle. "Don't open it," I said hoarsely, but even as I spoke, the truck engine died on its own. The headlights flickered once, then steadied, and the sound of hooves began again. Not from the trees, not from ahead or behind, from beneath us, directly under the center of the bridge, something rising slowly toward the wood, something large enough to press against the planks until they bowed inward slightly. The figures at both ends of the bridge smiled wider, as if whatever was coming up through the bridge was the real one. The wood beneath us bowed inward again, not enough to break, just enough to flex. The center plank let out a strained creak, as if something massive pressed upward from below and then settled back down. Connor's hand slipped from the door handle. No one moved. The figures at both ends of the bridge remained still, smiling, heads tilted at identical angles. They weren't advancing anymore. They didn't need to. Whatever was beneath us was closer. A slow, dragging sound moved along the underside of the bridge, heavy and deliberate, not scrambling, not climbing, measuring. The truck rocked slightly, suspension whining. "Don't look down," Mara whispered, but that was impossible. Every instinct in my body wanted to see what was pushing against the planks. I imagined horns scraping wood, a long snout lifting toward the seams between boards. Then the planks knocked once, from below, a hollow, resonant thud that vibrated through the truck's frame and into my bones. Connor swallowed hard. "It's testing the center." The center, where we were. I tried the door handle beside me. It wouldn't budge. Locked. I hadn't locked it. I looked at Eli. He shook his head once. I didn't either. The sound beneath us moved again, this time directly under my seat. The wood dipped slightly, then steadied. My heart hammered painfully. The figures at the ends of the bridge shifted in perfect unison. They both took one slow step backward. Clearing space, the realization came slowly and horribly. They weren't trapping us. They were making room. The planks beneath the truck let out a sharp crack. Not breaking, splitting slightly along an old seam. A dark line opened between two boards. From that gap, something pushed upward. At first, it was only shadow. Then, texture. Coarse hair brushing against the underside of the wood. A curved tip of something hard and pale forced into the crack. A horn. I choked on my own breath. It's not coming from the trees, I whispered. Connor nodded slowly. It's always been under the bridge. The horn withdrew slightly, then pushed again, harder. The crack widened. The truck shifted unevenly as the center plank bent further. Eli twisted the key again, frantic now. Nothing. The figures at either end stopped smiling. Their mouths relaxed into something neutral, observant. The horn disappeared. Silence followed. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then the underside of the bridge went still. No pressure, no dragging, no knocking. The absence of sound was worse than the noise. I felt a strange, sinking sensation in my stomach. It left, Mara whispered, hope threading weakly through her voice. Connor shook his head slowly. No. He pointed toward the rear view mirror. I forced myself to look. The back window reflected the interior of the truck. 4 of us, except my breath stopped. There were 5 shapes in the reflection. One stood directly behind my seat, tall, still, its head nearly touching the roof of the truck. I didn't feel it. I didn't hear it climb in. But it was there in the mirror, occupying space that didn't exist physically. Its horns curved close to the ceiling. Its face hovered inches behind my head. In the reflection, it leaned closer. My skin prickled violently, but I felt no breath on my neck. Connor followed my gaze. He saw it too. Don't turn around, he said quietly. I couldn't. I was too afraid that if I did, the mirror would show something different. The figure in the reflection opened its mouth slightly, not wide, just enough to show darkness inside. Then, in a voice that sounded almost human, rough, layered with something animal beneath, it spoke. Who called? The sound did not echo in the truck's air. It vibrated inside my head. Connor's breath hitched. Eli's hands trembled on the steering wheel. No one answered. The figure in the mirror leaned closer still, its face nearly overlapping mine in the reflection. Who? It repeated softly. Called? The figures at the ends of the bridge began to move again, slowly stepping inward, closing distance. I felt something cold and precise settle in my chest. Eli had called out first, but I had looked at it. I had met its eyes. I had watched it from the back window when we drove away the first time. The realization spread like frost. It hadn't followed the caller. It had followed the one who watched back, the one who acknowledged. The creature's hand in the reflection lifted slowly. One long finger extended toward my shoulder. In the truck, I felt nothing. But in the mirror, the finger pressed gently into my reflection's chest, right over my heart. You saw, it whispered. The planks beneath us shuddered once more. The 2 figures outside stopped only a few feet from the truck now, their heads tilted in opposite directions, watching, waiting. Connor's voice cracked. Don't answer it. The creature in the reflection smiled again, not wide, satisfied. You saw, it repeated softer now. That is enough. The truck engine suddenly roared to life on its own. All of us flinched violently. The headlights flared brighter. The figure behind me in the mirror did not move. The ones at either end of the bridge stepped back simultaneously. The truck lurched forward without Eli pressing the gas. We shot down the bridge, planks rattling violently beneath us. I didn't take my eyes off the rearview mirror. The figure remained behind me until the very last plank of the bridge left our tires. Then, it vanished, not fading, not jumping, gone. The mirror showed only the 4 of us again, breathing hard, alive. The forest swallowed the bridge behind us. This time, the road changed back to asphalt immediately. No loop, no return, no creaking planks. We didn't speak for several minutes. Then Mara whispered, "It let us go." Connor shook his head slowly. "No," he said. I knew before he finished. It let him go. The truck drove on through the dark forest, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted slightly inside me, like a door had opened quietly, not for entry, for observation. The road didn't loop again. We reached the highway 20 minutes later, in headlights merging with the occasional passing car like nothing had happened. The forest thinned. Cell service returned. The radio crackled back to life with some late-night country station that felt almost insulting in its normalcy. No one mentioned the bridge. Not on the highway. Not when we dropped Mara off. Not when Connor climbed out without saying goodbye. It was just Eli and me in the truck by the time we reached my apartment. He kept his eyes forward when he said it. "You okay?" I nodded. It felt automatic. "I'm fine." The word felt like a lie the moment it left my mouth, because I wasn't fine. I felt rearranged, like something had stepped slightly out of alignment inside me. Eli didn't argue. He didn't ask more questions. He just drove off, taillights disappearing down the street. I went upstairs, unlocked my door, stepped into my quiet apartment, and for a few seconds, I just stood there in the dark, listening. Nothing felt wrong, but something felt present. Not in the room, not in the hallway, inside my awareness. I locked the door behind me and turned on the lights. Everything looked exactly the same as it had before the drive. Couch, kitchen counter, bookshelf. I told myself it was adrenaline, that my body hadn't come down from fear yet, that once I slept, everything would feel smaller in the morning. I went to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. My face looked pale, eyes slightly unfocused, alive, human. I leaned closer. For just a second, the reflection leaned closer too, but slightly faster. I froze. The timing was wrong by half a heartbeat. I blinked hard. The reflection matched me perfectly again. I let out a slow breath and stepped back. "You're fine," I whispered. The word echoed faintly in the small bathroom. I went to bed. Sleep didn't come easily. Every creak of the building sounded like wood planks shifting. Every passing car outside sounded like hooves on pavement. At some point, I must have drifted, because I woke suddenly to a sound that didn't belong in my apartment. A hollow knock, not on the door, not on the wall, on wood, directly beneath my bed. My heart slammed so hard it hurt. I held my breath. The knock came again. Slow, deliberate, from under the floor. My apartment was on the 3rd floor. There was no wood bridge beneath me, no creek, no forest, just concrete and other units. The knock came a 3rd time, then silence, and I forced myself to sit up. The room was dark, except for faint streetlight bleeding through the blinds. I swung my legs slowly over the side of the bed. My feet touched the floor. Solid. Still. I stood. Nothing moved. I stepped into the hallway. The air felt heavier, familiar. That faint scent from the bridge, wet hay and something sour, lingered at the edge of my senses. "No," I whispered. I walked to the living room and turned on the lamp. The light steadied the space. Ordinary. Safe. Then I noticed something on the wooden floor near the center of the room. A faint scuff. 2 crescent-shaped marks pressed lightly into the finish, side by side, like the tips of hooves. I stared at them until my vision blurred. I hadn't owned anything that could make marks like that. They weren't scratches. They were impressions, as if something heavy had rested there briefly. Right where I stand most evenings. I felt the awareness again. Not external. Not watching from a doorway. from within my own line of sight, as if something stood just slightly behind my perspective. I turned slowly in a circle. The apartment remained empty, but the feeling didn't fade. It adjusted. When I looked toward the window, the awareness shifted toward the door. When I looked toward the door, it moved toward the hallway, always just outside direct vision. That's when I understood. It didn't follow the caller. It didn't follow the driver. It followed the witness, the one who looked too long, the one who met its eyes, the one who confirmed it was real. It doesn't chase. It doesn't need to. It waits for acknowledgement, for belief, for the moment someone looks back instead of away. The knock came again, this time from inside my chest, a dull, hollow thud that wasn't my heartbeat. I pressed my hand against my sternum. The sensation faded slowly. I walked back to the bedroom and lay down without turning the lights off. I didn't close my eyes. I didn't want to risk seeing it in the dark. Somewhere between waking and sleep, I heard it once more. Not hooves, not knocking, breathing, low, patient, right at the edge of my awareness, as if something stood just beyond what my eyes could register, waiting for me to look again. And sometimes, when I pass a wooden bridge or walk across old floorboards that creak beneath my weight, I feel that same hollow vibration beneath me, testing, measuring. If you ever find yourself on a quiet bridge at midnight, and someone dares you to call out, don't. And if you hear something answer from below, don't look. Because it doesn't matter who speaks first. What matters is who looks back. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing for more long-form horror narrations. You have been listening to American Haunted Tales.
Thank you for watching.